Um, yeah, so where I started, I wanted to touch on this just because I know a lot of people either got into homebrewing because they already loved beer and wanted to make their own, or they were in college, maybe couldn't buy beer, so they made it in their dorm or apartment or something like that. I actually, so I'm an engineer. I went to University of Arizona for electrical engineering. Was a pretty stereotypical nerdy engineer. I'm pretty introverted. And when I turned 21, I remember my girlfriend at the time, now she's my wife, she like hosted a party for me, and her dad actually made a beer for my 21st birthday, but I'd have like a couple beers and that was it. So was never a big drinker. And as I got older and became more of an adult than being in college, like if we went out to dinner or something, I'd order a beer, but I never really bought beer, never drank macro beer. It wasn't until 2019 I had a coworker, also an engineer, was very into home brewing, and he was moving from Arizona to Florida. And since he was very into home brewing, he kept on upgrading his equipment, like I've now done. And he had multiple brewing setups. And we were just talking at work one day, and I was asking him so many questions because I had no idea, you could make beer at home, like from grain, from scratch. So I was very interested in the process of it and not so much like the drinking of the beer part of it, which maybe is why I brew the way I brew today, which is mostly for competitions and technical. But anyway, so I got into homebrewing in 2019. A coworker gave me everything I needed. He gave me this system that you see on the left, the Brewer's Edge mash and boil. My first batch of beer was a all grain, just pale ale malt and Simcoe smash beer. You can see like down in the bottom left, me trying to figure out math in terms of how much water. And so that's how I started brewing. My initial process, put some pictures here from I think this was my first batch. So I used glass carboys. I put it in this spare bathtub, and I would just try to cool down fermentation a little bit compared to room temperature, probably being in the mid to high 70s. So I just put water and tried to cool it down every now and then. And then you can see up here in the top left, I was told to always go into secondary. So I had an auto siphon, right? I'd sanitize everything and auto siphon from one glass carboy to another and just oxidize the shit out of this beer. You can see here in the middle bottom picture a little bag of those are my dry hops that I squeezed in there, and getting all my bottles ready to the right. And so then I bottle conditioned everything. I know a lot of people, they talk about how much they hated the process of bottling, but I didn't know any better. That was actually another point I wanted to make. When I started brewing, I didn't know other home brewers. Wasn't part of a club. So this is just what I did. And I didn't think of it as a pain. I thought of it as kind of fun, and part of making beer. So bottle conditioned everything in these little swing tops. And so that's where I started. I don't know if that resonates with anybody or if anyone has any questions or comments on that, but this is how I brewed probably my first dozen batches.
Well, I'm sure we can all relate to those pictures in some way, shape, or form from those first few batches. That's for sure. Yeah. I certainly can.
Yeah. All right. So then.
Hey, Shane.
Yes, sir.
Well, what was your first beer that you brewed? I missed that.
Oh, who is that? Is that Ross?
That is.
Yeah, it's Ross.
Ross. Yeah. I did mention that. It was a smash beer, 100% just 2-row and Simcoe. I think this is pictures of it here. And I went from primary to secondary glass carboy, dry hopped in the carboy, bottle conditioned the whole batch. And I had drinkable beer at the end of it. I thought that's what got me into it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, I think my second batch, because I started brewing in 2019, I think first batch, I don't know, September-ish, almost 5 years exactly this time. And so my second batch was actually a pumpkin beer, pumpkin and spices for Thanksgiving. So yeah, as I started getting into home brewing and I just went down the rabbit hole, as I'm sure all of you here went down that same rabbit hole, I just started making very gradual improvements and I kept tweaking things until this is my setup here. And today I still use these two fermenters and this glycol chiller. And I used this barrel several times until I put Brett in it and I did a couple Brett beers. And then the barrel sat dry for a while and actually I threw away the barrel because I'm going to buy a fresh one sooner than later. So I don't have that barrel anymore, but this is my setup today. So how I got there, I remember there's a local homebrew shop here, and the guy who owns it, he used to be a brewer at one of the, I think probably the largest commercial brewery in Arizona, Four Peaks, if any of you have heard it, that aren't in Arizona. Their flagship beer is called Kilt Lifter. It's actually like a Scottish red ale. Not what you think about being a flagship beer, but it's one of the beers that got me drinking a long time ago. And he told me, because I'd go in and buy ingredients and ask a ton of questions. And like I said, I wasn't part of a club. And I remember him telling me, like, if you want to get better, don't, like, instead of buying another batch of ingredients, spending, I don't know, $80 on, he's like, don't come back here, spend that money on a fridge or something to temperature control your fermentation. So I think I used that Nextdoor app for neighbors, and I said, hey, is anyone getting rid of a fridge? And I had a neighbor a few streets down who's like, you can come pick up my old one, I don't want it anymore. So got that free fridge, threw a $20 Inkbird on it, and that became my new fermentation temperature or fermentation chamber instead of the bathtub. So that was a step up. Eventually got into kegging like a lot of people too. I don't know what drove me to do that. Because like I said, I didn't hate bottle conditioning. It just, I don't know, got into kegging. I think this is around the time when I started thinking about cold side oxidation and so wanted to get into kegging, upgraded my fermenters. First nice fermenter I bought was that SS Brewtech bucket. Did a ton of batches in that thing. I still have it, but I don't use it much anymore because I use these two. I usually don't have more than 2 batches going at a time. I stopped going into secondary. I'll probably never do that again, especially with these fermenters. I can dump stuff out the bottom. Closed transfers, because when I started kegging, it was just straight. I think I was still auto siphoning into the keg, right? Splashing it at the bottom as gently as I could. But so getting into closed transfer and then glycol for temperature control is what I do now. So over, 3-4 years is eventually where I got to where I am now. And then like Haven said, big into competition. So when I did join my local club, ASH, Arizona Society of Homebrewers, it was probably maybe 2020 or 2021. 2020 was a weird year, so maybe it was 2021. That's when I entered my first competition. And a fun thing I like to say about that is I remember I entered 3 beers, and my favorite was the favorite of the 3 that I entered was a Irish stout, like a Guinness clone. And my least favorite was this pineapple wheat that I made, pineapple American wheat beer. And I thought the Irish stout was pretty good and the pineapple wheat was not that great. And I think the pineapple wheat got a gold and the Irish stout didn't medal. And so I know people put a lot of emphasis on how you perform in competitions and you think your beer's great. It's just competitions. There is randomness and subjectiveness to it. So try not to beat yourself up too much if your beer that you love and think came out really good didn't medal, because it happens all the time. So then I started competing randomly around the US. Like I had, then I met a group of friends who were into homebrewing, and I had the homebrew club ASH that I was a part of. And every now and then I'd hear about a Beer de Rock, I think is a competition in Colorado. It's like Belgian onlys, and I had a Belgian beer, so I sent it to Colorado. And then Sods is another homebrew club, SODZ. They have like a British only beer competition somewhere throughout the year, and I had a British beer, so I sent it to there. So I just started doing these random competitions around the states, not for a circuit or anything, just kind of randomly popped up, and I'd send a few entries. And then because I started winning some medals, not every competition, not all the time, but I started chasing the hardware. I like collecting the hardware, as I think a lot of you guys do too, and the feedback, of course. I'll read the score sheets and go through it. I like that aspect. I eventually, through Ash, started BJCP training. We actually were lucky enough to have the president of BJCP be a local club member. He stepped down last year as the president, but he was super involved. He actually taught a class of us. Trevor, who's on the call, did that class with me, and then Ross waited too long, and he missed Dennis. But Dennis is an amazing teacher and really good judge, so I got to train with him on how to be a judge. That was really, really valuable. And so then I started helping judge competitions for Ash. So yeah, now I put this, I'm just kind of like an amateur perfectionist. That's what keeps me brewing is, and I think that another slide talks about this, that's like my biggest driver for this hobby. Everyone has different drivers, socially or just to have beer at home. I brew it to try to make as good a beer as commercial breweries. So Haven mentioned international. So the first international competition I entered was, last year. London. They have London Amateur Brewers Lab. And I just happened to notice, I think if you go on the BJCP's website and go to the competition calendar, you can sort by country and stuff like that. And I would always filter to US and look at the list of US competitions, and I'd be like, oh, this one's open now, I'll register for a few. That's how I used to enter competitions. I don't know what made me do it, but I do like British beers a lot. It's one thing that I'd like to focus on more, but I just keep kind of brewing random stuff. But I had a couple English beers, and I happened to look up competitions in England or UK or whatever that country code was, and I saw that this competition was coming up, and so I was like, all right, I'm going to enter that. And in terms of the process of entering that, it was the exact same as a US competition. They used that BC OEM software, and what I did is I emailed the competition organizer. There's like a contact us page on those competition websites. So I emailed that guy and I said, hey, I entered 2 beers. They actually limit you to entering 2 beers in this London comp. I had a dark mild and a strong bitter. And so I said, hey, I entered these 2, but I don't know how long it's, if it's going to get stuck in customs or how long shipping's going to take. And he was super cool about it. And he was like, yeah, just ship it to my house and then I'll take it to the competition for you. So I shipped them like a month early, and they got there in like 4 days. It was awesome. As far as customs, so I use Shippo to ship international or domestic. International goes through FedEx. It's the best option, cheapest. It was like $20 to ship from Phoenix to London, 4 bottles of beer. And where's I going with that? Oh, for the customs declaration, kind of what Doug said earlier, I didn't say liquid yeast sample. I think I put homemade soda in glass bottle for a birthday gift. I typed that whole thing out because the customs will open up that package. And the competition organizers have told me that the package was open. So I put something that if they look at it and they see a beer bottle, could be root beer for somebody's birthday. I don't think they really care. So there's nothing special about
the labels you put on there didn't give it away.
That's a good point. Like I said, they probably don't care. They probably open it up and make sure it's not drugs or a weapon or something like that. And okay, a few glass bottles, and I haven't had any problems with it.
They're probably
Now,
like, what kind of nerd would skip
What's
beer
that?
over?
What kind of what?
What kind of nerd?
We're
Yeah,
getting some feedback here.
Some of my buddies who know me pretty well, you know, I don't know, they'll give me a hard time for being all into the British stuff, for like Irish beer, British beer. If I had an opportunity to travel, you know, I went to Ireland a couple years ago, Scotland last year. Like that's just kind of like the type of stuff that I like. So yeah, I don't know. I just thought, how sweet would it be to win a medal in London for a British beer? So I went for it and got this third place for a dark mild last year. And then earlier this year, it would have been at the end of last year that I entered, but they were judged in January of 2024. I entered this Scottish National Homebrew Comp. I don't know how many beers I sent there, maybe just a couple. And I sent this rum barrel-aged English barley wine. And that's not a beer I would ever expect to get best of show, just because in my experience, best of show is typically like a really, really well-made lager. This beer ended up winning best of show at the Scottish National Homebrew Comp. That was insane. It was really cool. It's probably like the coolest accomplishment that I've gotten. They actually sent me, they PayPal'd me money. I forget what the prize was. It was like $500 or something like that, which is insane. And then they sent me, you know, trophies, like a medal and a trophy. So that was really cool.
Is that your only best of show?
No, I've got one other,
Okay.
which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then I entered that same London competition that I entered last year for the first time. I entered it this year, and my strong bitter got silver, which is this blue medal here. So those are my. So I joked with the competition organizers, the same guy last year and this year. I said last year I got bronze, this year I got silver. So next year I should be getting gold. I should be on track. And then I put this bullet here just for you guys, because I know a lot of you guys are competitive, especially Ross. Yeah, he's on here. Please don't make these competitions harder, and you don't have to enter these competitions, because then I have to compete with all you guys.
Funny story is Cheyne offered to the club, hey, does anyone want to join and ship some bottles over to this competition in Scotland? And I'm like, yeah, Cheyne, totally. And his response was, oh, sorry, man, the box is full. Thanks a lot, Cheyne.
Yeah, I'm not going to offer to help Ross compete. We can talk about Ross later. And then Haven mentioned Homebrewer of the Year for Ash. I think you said Haven 2023, but Ross is on the call. Ross won in 2023. I won it the year. I won it the year before. So I guess 2023 was I got to hold the title for 2023 for winning it in 2022, if that makes sense. Ross is now the defending Homebrewer of the Year from last year, and Ross and I are going for it again this year. So how that works, similar to what the Brew Club is doing, a little bit different though. Ash will run a large open spring and fall competition to anybody, so all of you guys can, and I think some of you have entered these competitions, and the fall competition is on the Brew Club circuit. So those are the two big competitions. Then we have member only mini competitions that are worth more points. And so what will happen is, like, beginning of the year, there's a random mini competition. I forget, this year it was like People's Choice, so it's kind of just like bring your best beer and whatever wins. And they just do like a kind of a best of shows judging. So gold, silver, bronze. And then in the summer, there was a lawnmower beer competition. So it was limited to certain styles: German Pilsner, cream ale, Kolsch, blonde ale, handful of others. That just got judged a little bit ago, and we don't know who won that yet. I think Ross and I both entered that. I don't know, Trevor, did you enter that one? Trevor's on.
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, we try to enter these smaller member only comps. They're, I don't know, maybe a dozen, 15 entries, but you get a lot more points if you medal in one of those comps. You get points for medals only, so it's different than MHP and the Brew Club in that I think both of those take into account like entry count at a table, and it's just like 3 points for gold, 2 points for silver, 1 point for bronze, kind of a scoring. And that might be like multiplied by 3 or 4 for the mini comps. I won by 1 point. Go ahead.
Are those judged by BJCP guidelines, or is that are all of those mini comps like just best of show kind of people's choice things?
That's a good question. They are judged all BJCP style, but yeah, they are. We'll get a score sheet for the lawnmower beer, but
nice.
We'll get a score sheet, right? But all that did is kind of like a mini boss. So you get a score sheet, probably the tops handful of beers went on to a best of show round, and that's what determined medals, and that's what determines homebrew of the year points.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, in 2022, I won by 1 point. The only way I could win homebrew of the year is if at the end of the year mini competition, which was holiday beers only, so Thanksgiving and Christmas beers, I had to win gold, and the guy who was in second place, he could not medal, and that's what happened. So it was like the only way I could have won is how I won. And I was very strategic that year with like what I brewed. So I didn't brew things that would be at the same table, right? I wouldn't brew like a porter and a stout that might be at the same table. I just kind of brewed totally random stuff. English beer, American beer, Belgian, just fruit. This year they're doing style multipliers. So like for the fall competition that's coming up in a month or so for us, there are a few styles that will win you extra points. And so like Ross and I, Trevor, that are in the more competitive side of our club, will brew those styles. And you'll have like a table of like 15 dunkels, you know, because everyone is trying to win that extra points. And there's a cash prize. Like I got a cash prize. That was basically it. I got this little parking spot every time I went to the clubhouse. I think, and then Ross winning last year, he gets to work with a local commercial craft brewery, and they're going to take, I think, a couple of his recipes and scale them up. And Ross will have his own beer on tap, and we can all go get it. This I wanted to show you guys. This was my planning in 2022 because I had some like vacations planned out. So I did this stupid little Gantt chart in Visio because I was like, and I've only got 2 fermenters and I've only got so many kegs in keg space. And I was like, all right, I got to turn all this stuff over if I'm going to go for it. So I did all this planning, which is like, this is better planning than I do for my own job. So just you can see like the 10 styles it looks like I was going for in 2022. We usually limit those bigger competitions to 10 entries. So you can see I was all over the place. I had a Gosa, rum barrel-aged stout, New Zealand Pilsner, a Belgian quad, a couple meads, English brown, which was a spiced beer with vanilla, strong bitter. I think I did an amber lager, not an amber ale, double IPA, and a cider. So I was just all over the place. I think I'm almost done. Yeah, I'm almost done. So brewing philosophy, like where I'm at today, I do like spending a lot of time on recipe development. Kind of down to the last bullet here. I have never brewed the same recipe twice, and I've only brewed the same style of beer a handful of times. So like strong bitter is one of my favorites. New Zealand Pilsner is one of my favorites. But like the Fest beer I just brewed, first time I brewed that. Before that, I did a German Pilsner, first time I did that. Now I got a Dunkelsbach going. I'm about to do a black IPA. I've never done any of those beers. I just keep doing different stuff. So I'll look at like winning NHC recipes If you're an AHA member, you can look up their whole database, and I like going through that, and I piecemeal kind of pieces from different winning recipes. I like Mean Brews. It's nerdy and technical. So I'll watch an episode on the style that I'm looking at. Craft Beer and Brewing is a good podcast and magazine and website for recipes as well. All these stuff. Homebrew Challenge, Average Brew, of course. I'll research the history of a certain style. I'll piece together my own recipe from all these sources. I usually don't just take a recipe and brew it exactly as it is. I try to stay true to style. So if I'm brewing an English beer, I use Maris Otter. Don't use American Two-Row just because that's just how I am. I know you can make a good beer with whatever you got on hand, but I don't really do this short and shoddy approach. I really try to stay true to style and the process. Like I mentioned earlier, I do mostly brew for competitions now. I don't brew very frequently, so it's like I brew once and that's the competition beer that I have, so I'm hoping it's good enough to compete. Fermentation ramp. This is just something I do almost every fermentation, so I figured I'd mention it to you guys. Maybe you all do something similar, but I always ramp up at the end of fermentation, whether I'm doing an ale lager. I'll start colder for a lager than I will for an ale, but pretty much 3, 4, 5 days into it, then I start ramping it up, and then I stay there for sometimes a couple weeks, especially if I don't want to keg it. I'll just leave it there. And then I've started paying a lot more attention to pH lately. That's a big thing. If you listen to these, especially craft beer and brewing podcasts, and listen to pro brewers, especially on IPAs. So I've always kind of paid attention to mash pH and adjusted it, to hit that number, but I'm starting to pay more attention to the other processes, especially finishing pH. I haven't measured and adjusted yet, but it's something that's always on the back of my mind now.
Where are you finding your resources on finishing pH?
The only thing that I've really heard about that is this craft beer and brewing podcast.
Okay.
Some of those podcasts, these pro brewers will nerd out about that stuff, and there are a couple of episodes from that podcast. Have you listened to them, Haven?
Oh yeah, pretty much every episode. I always forget to write down what they're talking about, especially when they're talking finishing pH.
Yeah, I don't write them down either, but that's why it's always in the back of my mind. So for example, I have this black IPA coming up, and that is one of the style multipliers for the fall competition. So it's okay, I want to pay attention to that, especially because it's a black IPA. I'm going to be adding the roasted malt at mash out, right? So then it's well, that's going to potentially acidify the wort a little bit. Where's my pH going to be after mash out compared to the normal mash? And then do I want to potentially adjust that pH for when I dry hop? I haven't done that before, but I probably will start paying attention to that more and more, especially an IPA that's intended for competition, especially going up against Ross, because I do know Ross does that.
Ooh, that's a secret.
Yeah, so we can, after this, we can open it up and get Ross's secrets on that.
We would like all of Ross's secrets.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I know it. You want to know it? I'll tell you. You brew Ross, how many beers do you have fermenting right now?
Surprisingly enough, I only have 4 beers going right now.
Yeah, see, that's surprisingly only 4.
Not too many.
Because sometimes...
And they're both the same. It's 2 black IPAs, by the way, Shane, just so you know.
I know.
That's funny.
So what Ross does is he brews multiple batches of the same style, and he'll pick the best one to send to competitions. And so he'll spend all Saturday brewing 4 batches of the same style. So I'm not going to do that. So that's Ross's secret. All right, so finishing here, I've got two more slides. My 2 favorite styles, I mentioned them earlier, New Zealand Pilsner and Strong Bitter. I've got a link here. I can send you guys the recipe we can look at it if you guys are interested. This was my first Best of Show win. What was really funny about this was my first batch that I brewed that went into this Chronicle my new fancy fermenter, stuck it in here. I was like, all right, sweet. Got glycol hooked up for the first time. Brewed this New Zealand Pilsner. I dry hopped it. And then I went to go transfer out of the bottom port here. And it was clogged. And I was so paranoid about oxidizing this beer. It's hoppy. I'm going to ruin it. I was so anxious trying to get this beer kegged. It was a freaking nightmare. And if things don't go right, I kind of freak out and I'm running around trying to get this kegged. And I'm also kind of impatient. It wasn't working. So you can see what I did. I freaking threw that lid off and I auto siphoned it out of this fancy ass fermenter straight into the keg, open lid, splashing down there because this line wasn't long enough to reach the bottom of that keg. Got this New Zealand Pilsner kegged and it freaking won best of show, my first best of show win. So I don't know, maybe there is something to relax, don't worry, because still could be great.
That was
so
one of the ones you sent me.
Yeah, this was awesome. This was a rice lager, basically. It was Pilsner malt and rice. When I brewed a New Zealand Pilsner again for the second time, I swapped out the rice for wheat, which I think is a more traditional ingredient for a New Zealand Pilsner. I don't know why I went with rice. I think I just wanted a light, crisp, hoppy lager, and I called it a New Zealand Pilsner. I mean, I use New Zealand hops, but don't think rice is traditional in that, and it won best of show. And then this is my recipe for the ESB or strong bitter. I've reiterated this recipe a couple times and I plan on brewing it again, hopefully soon. And that would be my 4th time brewing that. And I just keep tweaking the recipe. I've changed out base malt. I've added a little bit of pale chocolate, removed pale chocolate. So I like this. And so I can send out this recipe to you all too. Oh, one more slide. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You want to pull those recipes up? We can take a look.
Yeah. I'll just finish this last slide and then we'll look at the recipes. Coming soon, I figured I've been working kind of here and there, like almost every evening on weekends. This is my new Keyser I'm building. Just finished this up. Well, it's not finished yet. It's a work in progress. This is what it looks like as of today, except I drilled the hole for the gas line a couple days ago. So this is coming soon. I'll have 8. This will hold 10 kegs, but I just put 8 taps on it. And I bought these cool little inline digital regulators because I am pretty anal about, I want my English beers carved lower than like my Belgian beers or my Pilsners. And I will calculate the volumes of CO2, or I'll calculate the pressure that I need based off the volumes of CO2 that style is. And I always wanted to like put exactly that pressure, and I had these little analog gauges, and so I got these little things, and I haven't hooked them up yet. We'll see if they work good. So I'm excited to get these.
Shane, when you mount those, make sure you mount it at a place where it's easy to see, because they're a pain to turn on. You have to turn it on, then you have to turn the light on, and make sure you can see it clearly, because sometimes when you turn the light on, it'll change it from PSI to bar to some other setting.
Yeah,
because
because
it's just easy to see.
To turn the light on, you have to hold that unit button, right?
Yeah, you have to hold the yellow button down, which is the unit. But if you don't hold it long enough, it'll change from PSA to bar, and then you'll completely have the wrong number.
Yeah.
Experience.
That's a good.
By the way.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting this going. I've been saying for a couple of weeks now that I hope it will be in use by this weekend, but I think I'm closer than ever. All right, so as Haven mentioned, let's look at these recipes. I'm going to open up this New Zealand Pilsner recipe. This is my first New Zealand Pilsner, and this was the recipe, by the way. It didn't attenuate to 5%. The expected final gravity was 1007, and it only attenuated down to, I think, 1012. So it was less than 4.5% for this beer, but like I mentioned, it was Pilsner and rice. 8 pounds and 3 pounds. That was it. You can see I did a step mash for it. 131, 144, 160, and then mash out. And ton of New Zealand hops. Well, that's something I should mention. I was signed up at the time of when I brewed this. I was signed up for that. You guys ever see that Yakima Valley like subscription box? You get like eight, I think it was 8 different 2-ounce cans every quarter.
Yeah, they got rid of that. I'm kind of bummed.
Yeah, I actually canceled my subscription before they got rid of it because what happened is I wasn't brewing enough to keep up with it, and my freezer was just becoming like dozens of these little 2-ounce cans. That's what was the inspiration for me brewing this, because one of the quarters was a bunch of these New Zealand hops. So I used up, and you can see a lot of times I'll brew something so it adds up to what I have. So like this Waihiti, I had a 2-ounce canister of it. So 1 ounce first wort and then 1 ounce dry hop. So I used all 2 ounces of it. And so that happened probably Motueka, 0.4 here, 0.6 here, and 1. So I used up all these little 2-ounce canisters of these hops that I had. When I brew a Pilsner, I do like it to be a bit higher on the IBU. It's just personal preference. So I typically like high 30s to around 40 for German Pilsner or New Zealand Pilsner. Only difference being New Zealand Pilsner, obviously the hops, and I'll dry hop it. And I think everything else is pretty standard on this. Water chemistry, a little bit higher on the sulfate because I like the higher bitterness and crispness. I also tend to target a little bit higher sulfate for the Pilsners. I use 3470 for a lot of my lagers. And I will use the yeast pitch calculator. So based off the temperature you're going to ferment at and the original gravity and the batch size, these manufacturers will tell you like, oh, use 2 packages or 3 packages. And so that's what I do. I used to not ever make starters. I started that recently. But yeah, so I'll just pitch 3 packages of it and ferment pretty cold. And you can see I usually do, like I said earlier, I'll ferment at a certain temperature for a handful of days and then I'll increase it.
Are you doing just your local tap water? Or are you doing RO or distilled?
Yeah, that's a good point. Every brew day for me starts either the morning of or the day before we've got these stores in Arizona called Water and Ice. I don't know if it's a national chain, but they're all over, not all over, but yeah, so I take my 2 5-gallon jugs and I get 10 gallons of RO water before every brew day. I've thought about putting in an RO system in my house, but I recently just moved. Actually, yeah, you can see behind me if you're seeing my video here. I've got still not 100% moved in. So I just moved and life's been hectic and I have a 10-month-old child. So I'll get to if I want to put an RO system, it's just at the bottom of the priority list.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I always start with RO water. I use this to calculate what to add. I also don't add if I am sparging, which nowadays is less and less common for me, but if I am sparging, I don't add the salts to the sparge water. I will just sparge with RO water, and then I'll add these to the boil. I don't know why I do that. A buddy told me once about that, and that's what I do.
You're mostly full volume mashes now, though?
Yeah, most of the time. This was probably my old system, which I shared earlier, that mash and boil system, which had like a basket that had holes only on the bottom. And so it was made to sparge. My new system is the SS Brewtech single SVBS, and it's got the same like basic construction, but the basket has holes all the way up. So if I do sparge, it's a freaking mess because it's just like if I sparge hard enough and if I pour kind of too hard, it splashes out the sides and it'll splash outside the kettle too. It just is a mess. So if the beer that I'm brewing is low enough original gravity, then yeah, I'll just do full volume. But if I'm brewing a beer like the black IPA in a week or two, that I'm hoping, I don't want to give too many secret. Ross already brewed his, so it doesn't matter. I'm hoping for an 8% black IPA. And so that'll be a bit higher of a original gravity. So that one I'll probably have to sparge a little bit just because I won't be able to fit all the grain in the mash.
Wow.
Last thing, then we can just chat. This is my strong. I think this was my first strong bitter. I've tweaked this a few times since, but this is kind of the original idea here. This is my ESB. So starting with the malts, like I said, I always will do Maris Otter. I switched this to that Chevalier malt. I'm probably going to go back to just regular Maris Otter. Maris Otter, some British crystal malt, some biscuit malt, a little bit of flaked wheat. I mean, that's such a small amount. You could probably just get rid of that. I might have gotten rid of that in the future. A little bit of dark crystal. I use DRC a lot if I'm going for darker crystal. And then a little bit of pale chocolate for color adjustment. And you can see here, I just added it at mash out. I don't know where I got this or why I do this, but every strong bitter I make, I add in a container of Lyle's golden syrup. It's like a British, I think it's an invert sugar. It's like a British honey.
Have you tasted it raw? What does it taste like?
That's a good question. I have not tasted it raw. It comes in this little container, and it says something about like made for Her Majesty. So I just felt like it was appropriate to be in my beer. Yeah, so it's a little container. You can see I purchased this before. So yeah, I just throw this in, just like if you're going to add dextrose or something to a light-bodied beer. I guess with this one, I'm trying to balance having some richer, sweeter malt character from the crystal with keeping it dry and drinkable too. And that's been part of the challenge with this beer style. I actually have always used this yeast strain for my strong bitter, this Y yeast 1968. I've always used that. I think I'm going to change it because it does not attenuate as much as I would like. It does leave a little bit of a fuller body. And I think, me personally, and I think for competition, it would benefit if it were a bit drier, crisper, and drinkable. So next time I brew this, I'm not going to use this yeast.
So you thinking Nottingham?
I don't know yet. I don't know yet.
Or 04?
Is that what you think?
Well, if you're looking for the English character, but still being dry, I would say Nottingham will be a little cleaner, and 04 will give you a little bit more of the English character, but still be pretty dry.
Yeah. That makes sense. I think this is my first recipe. Like I said, the first time I did 66 degrees, I think I've since bumped that up just because I am looking for character from this yeast. So like now I'll probably ferment close to 70 for this beer. All British hops, of course, except this one. When I do weird things like this, it's because I have a random freaking container of hops in the freezer, and I'm just gonna kill it, and I want a little bit more bitterness, so I threw in some middle fruit in this beer. I don't know. It's gonna boil for an hour, so I don't care. I just wanted to use them up. So all EKG, which have been kind of hard to find sometimes. So I've switched. One of my batches of this beer used Sonnet, which is apparently U.S. or Oregon grown EKG.
I think I got that recommendation from Will Allward, if I remember correctly. He used not you, Will. God, I thought it was you. Yeah, someone recommended it. Do you recall what character that hop?
I think it's pretty similar. Might be just a tad fruitier, but it's pretty similar.
Okay.
For this one, you can see the first time I mashed 153. I like to play around with this too. I forget where I'm gonna have to look at my notes and see where I want to mash next time. It might be quite a bit lower to try to dry it out a little bit. And then this one, I like to Burtonize my water for my British beers. I like to pump up the sulfate, and I did an English IPA, which was very similar to this recipe, just a bit hoppier and a bit more bitter, but otherwise pretty damn similar. And I went like, if you watch the Mean Brews episode on English IPA, he talks about water chemistry in that, and it's like 400 ppm or something like that. So, yeah, it was a ton of gypsum.
Like, or anything over 200 ppm scares the shit out of me. I've done it a couple times. Like, are you getting that minerally, like flinty, kind of nasty chemical character from that?
I'm not. My English IPA, I forget the number that I had. I think it was higher than this. And I think because it's such a richer malty malt bill that, I mean, in my opinion, the malt dominates that mineral character that you might get.
You're counteracting all that sulfate in there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, if you guys want, I don't know, I can share these on Discord. I don't have Facebook, so I can share them on Discord if you all want, but or you can send them out. But yeah, happy to share these recipes with you all. These are my two favorite beer styles that I'll continue to iterate on. That's all I got. I hope you guys somewhat enjoyed that. I was looking at the past guests that you've had. You've had like Martin Keene, you've had Will Lovell, and now it's me. So I don't know. I don't know who's going to be after me. Maybe Ross.
There we go. To be fair, we're always stuck with Will Lovell, so you know he's on every meeting.
Yeah.
I don't know if he heard that or not, but that's okay. He'll hear the recording.
Basically, the backup when people back out, so it's great.
That's true. We all the leadership guys have something in, well, maybe not all of us, but we at least have like some ideas in case someone backs out that like, oh shit, we got to put together a presentation in like a day or something. So we haven't had too many of those instances, but shit, we're coming up on 3 years straight of meetings and we haven't missed one. So that's been kind of cool to have a bunch of cool guests. And no, Shane, you were fantastic. Thank you for that. Especially the I just think that overseas shipping is just, that's insane. I don't know if I'd ever have the stones to do that.
Well, when I did it the first time in London, and then it got me thinking like, okay, I want to medal in England with an English beer. Part of like one of my goals is kind of to win a medal in Germany with a German beer and a Belgian medal with a Belgian beer, and so that's kind of on my radar. I looked at it earlier this year, and you know, it is hard because some of those countries, they don't have competitions or they're not very frequent. And then I think recently I checked and it was like the website was not in English and it wasn't like BC OEM. It was kind of a weird entry. You know, it's almost like you have to be local to enter. And I'm like, well, I guess I can't enter that one. But yeah, it's kind of, I think it'd be really cool to ship a Czech pale lager to frickin' Pilsen and try to win a medal.
Have you considered going outside of Europe, going somewhere else and trying to compete there?
I have not, but I know like South America has a pretty big homebrew community, and yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, Brazil is huge in beer and homebrew and like professional brewing competitions. They have a ton, which kind of surprises me.
That craft beer and brewing podcast that the host Jamie, he's talked about this something in Tijuana, like a big competition in Tijuana.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't recall. I know he's talked about South America, but
New Zealand.
Oh, New Zealand.
Are you saying that the entire brew club needs to bomb some poor country and just knock their competition into oblivion?
That would be pretty awesome.
The mid-size U.S. competitions are going to get sick of us tearing shit up when we come to town and we win 32 freaking medals.
I was just looking at the chat here.
Oh yeah, are there
Who
questions?
said throw them in your notes when you're listening? That's what I do. Oh, you're talking about podcast and like, oh, mash pH should be this, knockout pH should be this. You can put them in your phone.
That's smart. I typically listen when I'm like biking or working out, so then I don't have my phone like attached to my arm, so I don't. So I'm like, God, I got to remember that, and I get home and there's a million other things that are in my head, so I always forget. But yeah, I know a lot of professional brewers focus on finished boil pH and then finishing beer pH too, and dropping that typically. So I thought about messing about that in my pilsners for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're doing that. They're also doing that because they have to look. They have a beer that they have to make the same 52 times in a row. It has to be identical, and so that pH is giving them a guide to say, hey, this one's gonna have an issue. We need to blend it, or do something, pull a lever.
Yeah.
I think they also have to be under a certain pH for food safety.
Yeah. That was
Isn't normal beer typically under that pH?
No,
Yeah, yeast typically fixes that.
Unless you dry hop massively.
Yeah, so in the craft beer and brewing like IPA episodes they did with Russian River and some of the others, they were talking about finishing beer pH, and like I think it's like 4.6 finishing is considered food safe, 4.6 and below.
Wow.
And I forget who it was, but somebody on that podcast was like, "Oh shit, we're finishing at 4.7 or 4.8," and so then they were like, "Well, technically not food safe."
Wow, interesting. I thought anything fermented, especially with the alcohol in there, was pretty damn safe. But
It's got alcohol in it. It'll all come out in the wash.
so you hope.
Hey Ross, what's your black IPA pH?
You know what, Shane? I have no clue because I haven't looked at it in about 3 weeks. It's just sitting there in the fermenter, waiting for a dry hop. But
Nice.
the pH going in was 5.3 pre-fermentation, so I anticipate it's probably around 4.5, 4.4.
What was your mash pH compared to your post boil?
My mash pH, I did it a little high, so I added the dark grains at Vorlauf, so I didn't acidify much with all of the base malts, and so that's when I measured the pH, and I think it's at like 5.5, 5.6, and then I added the dark grains, and it dropped down to 5.3, and then it finished around that going into the boil kettle. But I did adjust it. I kind of continually adjust the pH, and I try to shoot for a darker beer like 5.3, and for like a IPA or a hazy or some of the lagers around like 5.1 going into fermentation.
I'm glad you guys gave me the heads up on the black IPA.
Hold on, we got to mute Ross. He's
Sorry, I apologize. I just dropped off my forget about it brews at the airport here, so I'm driving, so might be a little noise.
Oh, nice. What were you saying, Doug?
I'm glad you guys gave me a heads up on that black IPA, because I have one that just went into conditioning, and now I guess no matter how good it is, it's not going to go into the end of the fourth quarter competitions, because I don't want to be head to head with you two.
No, you never know. You could freaking win gold there.
Not with the
But
beer
also-
I
If you're
tasted yesterday.
comfortable enough, I think you'll be all right.
I tasted it yesterday. I'm hoping it calms down, because it's like an 8.7 ABV, and
Nice.
it tastes like it has rubbing alcohol in it right off. But it's not a fair sample, because it was after I kegged the sample that's sitting in the yeast, I pulled the last bit off and took a taste of it.
Oh yeah.
So I'm hoping it gets better, but I'm not going to go. I'll throw that into some local competitions. I won't be putting that one into the brew club comps. I ain't stupid.
That's a tough style to nail the pH, because you want your mash pH to be higher so it doesn't get acrid, but it's a hoppy style, so you want the pH to be lower so it's not muted and dull with the hops. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, so Ross was just saying his mash pH was a little bit higher, right? And I think he said he didn't adjust mash pH because he was adding the dark grain later. Whereas for me, when I brew this, my mash will be all pale malt, mostly all pale malt, I think. So I probably will lower my mash pH a little bit for conversion too. I like mash pH to be around like 5.3, 5.4. So I might be a little bit lower than Ross. It'll be interesting to see if we could tell that. But I think by the time we dry hop the shit out of it, you probably are not going to be able to tell a 0.1 or 0.2 difference in pH side by side.
That's a style I've never been able to get into. I just can't do those. The dark grains and the hops just don't work for me. I think that was that Thirsty Pagan beer I sent you, that dark ale. That one was good,
Yeah.
but it wasn't insanely hoppy. So I don't know if that was technically a black IPA or not, but that was
No.
probably the better one that I've had. But yeah.
My goal with the black IPA, and like kind of Ross said, like adding the hops at Vorloff or mash out, whatever your process is, my hope is that it turns it black with very little roast. Oh yeah, look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Doug's got his black IPA sample.
Yeah,
I feel like I would just
the alcohol is hot with
Cinnamar.
this.
Nice.
What was that, Clay?
I said I feel like I would just have to heat and use Cinnamar, just because to get that balance just right with actually getting darkness, I feel like would be impossible.
Yeah, that's a hard. You want the dark, but you want the pH in the body of a light beer. That's tough.
Midnight.
Yeah.
I think midnight wheat works well.
That is what I'll be using.
I went the other way. I put some rye in mine. I wanted to give it a creamy. I wanted it to be dry, but still have a creamy velvet kind of mouthfeel.
Interesting.
Dang, that's crazy. We're going to give all my secrets away. I am planning on brewing this black IPA with a little bit of rye malt and midnight wheat at mash out. So that's awesome. You guys touched on it.
Man, if I don't use rye or victory, like that's basically it. If it doesn't have rye, it's got victory. If it doesn't have victory,
So you're doing the same thing with the rye. You're trying to get in the wheat. You're trying to get that mouthfeel.
My reasoning for adding a little bit of rye was, I don't know, you may disagree with me, but my thought process was, I thought that the rye would give it a little bit of like earthy character that I thought would go good with the hops. And if there is a little bit of roast character, well, there will be a little bit of roast character, like unavoidable. I thought that the rye might help kind of like bring it. I don't think I'm going to get wheat character from the midnight wheat. I think that's just going to be a little bit of roast in the color. So I thought the rye would help if there's that roast in the. I'm going to try to use some hops that'll give me a little bit of like that resiny character too. So I'm like not just like a modern West Coast IPA fruit bomb. I want some resin in there, some pine dank. So I thought the rye would go well with that. So it wasn't so much like you were saying like a body or mouthfeel thing for me. It was more if there's a earthy component to that rye coming in.
Okay. Yeah, so I just judged a competition, and the second place was a black IPA, and the balance on it was phenomenal, and it was dry and had that kind of velvet mouthfeel. And I was talking with the other judge, who was a writer who actually judges internationally. He gets paid to go to Europe to judge competitions.
Nice.
And so he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I think there's rye in here. He goes, I've had beers like this. He goes, I think that thing they have in there is rye. So I'm like, oh, note to self, let's put some rye in this thing.
Nice.
I think I brewed a couple, and I know pretty sure I used wheat in one, and I remember thinking it would be better with like flake barley or something. But thinking about it, I think rye would work better because of that earthy component would go with any kind of roast, and especially if you're more piney type hops, I think the rye would be the better
Rye
choice.
makes everything better.
In my tasting notes, I'm getting chocolate from the dark malt. I'm getting the I would call it a paprika, kind of like a earth, like a cooking seasoning. That's probably some of that earthiness that's coming in, and a sharp bitterness, and then I finish with like I just had a shot of whiskey. So let's see what it does after a couple of weeks of conditioning.
Yeah.
Shane,
They
what
also
hops
make
did you
a
use in that?
Caro rye too, just in case you're interested in that.
What is it?
Caro rye, so it's a caramel rye.
I've heard of that.
I've heard that's good.
I used that in a dark saison once, and it was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little more sweet, but that earthiness was perfect. I haven't brewed that beer again. I gotta brew that.
Oh my God, this is crazy. You guys are I gotta share my screen again. This is my recipe. There's my malt bill. I'm using up some of this leftover like Maris otter, basically. Look at that. Caramel rye, midnight wheat, and a little bit of corn sugar. Why not? That's my black IPA recipe.
Wow. 2 pounds of midnight wheat, really?
That's
Oh,
wild.
so the reason you can see that, I think I added a note. Sometimes I'll put notes in here like, why are you thinking what you're doing? Right here. Midnight wheat added at mash out for color only. Thinking of buying 2 pounds of this since I don't want to only have 1 or 1.5 pounds and have to use it for longer to get the color up, but increase roast. So you can see why I do some of these. Even I might question myself, like, Jesus, that's a lot of midnight wheat. But that's why, is because my thinking is, if I'm mashing with just the top 3 grains, right?
Mm-hmm.
And okay, now I want to turn it black as quickly as possible with no roast. I was thinking, well, just get a shit ton of midnight wheat, throw it in, let it turn black, and pull it all out.
Quick question on Brewfather. How did you get, so it doesn't give a percentage on your midnight wheat or your corn sugar?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so how did you, since that wasn't added during the mash, was it not, how did you do that?
I got to be honest with you, that wasn't intentional, but I bet, oh, it's that checkbox.
Oh, exclude from total. Gotcha. So you added that to like later in the mash, so you can exclude that from the total of your. Okay.
Yeah, so I think by default the grain use is default. Imagine that. But if I'm going to be doing something like you can see this fermentable,
Like okay.
added into boil just for a little bit of OG bump and keep it light. Yeah, this one, when I do this, it's like I'm adding it at mash out. And I guess, yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting because yeah, there's certain ingredients that'll add on there that'll add to the total, but it's not used in the. So like I have physical brew sheets that I do too, so I usually just put those in the boil or whatever. But that's interesting. I didn't know that was a function of Brewfather.
Mm-hmm. Just in all honesty, if you guys are trying to take a screenshot or snoop out my hops, these are not what I'm using. I just put kind of placeholders, so don't look into the hops too much. What were you gonna ask?
What size batch is that?
I like to shoot for 6 gallons because I do have loss in my system. Like not all of the liquid transfers over from the kettle to the fermenter. So, actually no, that's accounted for here. Sorry. If you look at edit, right here, this Trub chiller loss. So that's accounted for. So my boiling size is probably like 8 gallons. It's a lot for a 5-gallon batch. Yeah, I shoot for 6 gallons or 5.5 into the fermenter because I always want to end up with the full keg. And I do end up leaving beer behind in the fermenter.
Yeah.
Solid plan.
That seems like a I don't know. Have you done that with the mash out dark grains? 'Cause that seems like a lot.
Oh, this amount?
Yeah.
I have not. This was mostly, I think, I haven't brewed this yet. This was mostly as a reminder to me to buy this mount.
Okay.
Whether I use it all or not will be a different story. I might start, say, like 1 pound. It's not, I don't know. Because, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I just kind of wing it on brew day. You know, I have a plan, but then once things are in motion, then all bets are off.
You said earlier that you're throwing your dark greens in at mash out. So I've been throwing them in at the last 15 minutes of the mash. When you throw them in at mash out, are you just basically trying, eliminating any possible fermentation conversion and just going straight for color drain?
Yeah. Yeah, because if I added them last, say, 10 minutes of the mash, that would be 10 minutes of the mash plus another 10 minutes or so of mash out. Because I usually will always raise up to 168 at the end of mash, and that's when I'll so that's when I want to add the dark grain.
I'll have to try that. I've been adding it at the last 10 minutes of the mash out. But my concern are of the mash. But my biggest concern is Grainfather doesn't have a mechanism to remind me.
Oh, that's. Oh, I see what you're saying.
I saw on yours you were able to put 10 minutes of the mash. On Grainfather, it's just in the mash or it's not. And all the other elements, it allows you to say 10 minutes in the boil or whatnot. But on that one, it's all or nothing.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Also, like on brew days, sometimes I don't go by the reminders of the brewing software. Like I'll tell my watch to set a timer, or like my Amazon listening devices that are all over the house. I'll tell one of them to set like a 10-minute timer or something, because I might be thinking of something different than like the brewing software. Like I want to add in midnight wheat or something.
Interesting.
So.
Well, awesome.
So another question for Ross: if he's brewing 4 of the same beer, what the heck is he doing with the other 3 beers that he decided weren't good enough? Is he just slamming them or donating them somewhere, or is it going to a homeless center? What's going on with this beer?
Yeah, I think Shane exaggerated just a tad about the quantity of beer, but no, I tend to make two beers. So I do a 10-gallon batch, and I split it into 2 5-gallon batches. And normally, I actually make 2 different beers out of it. So I'll make 2 different styles. So like the Belgian single, made 10 gallons of that, but I did a Czech premium pills. So I split it into 2 because they're pretty, like if you look at the guidelines, they're pretty close, similar hops, and then I run 2 different yeasts. So that's usually what I end up doing, is just doing a split batch and 2 different beers. But for this case with the black IPA, and then we're doing a fest beer, I try to make 2 because I don't want Shane to beat me. So we got to have a couple of those.
But Ross does have a huge, I think, stockpile of, he cans his beer. So he'll do like a canning run, can off the whole keg. And I think he's got a supply of a shit ton of cans somewhere in a fridge. But Ross, I didn't exaggerate, because I distinctly remember something about you having like 4 Weiss beers or Dunkelweisses or something going on at the same time. Oh, but I think that might have been for NHC. So you were going twice as hard for NHC.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get any beers through an NHC. Congratulations to a lot of you guys who did. But I got one through on a beer we did as a collab with another guy on the Homebrew Club, and it was a German Hefeweizen. So we made 5 of those together, and he just sent those off the winner. And thank God we did, because there was a clear winner.
Nice.
Oh.
Not the dry hopped one, right?
No, the dry hop one came in third. It basically looks like a hazy IPA and tastes a little weird. Dry hopped with Hallertauer Middle Fruit during active fermentation. Came out real hazy and it tastes a little too like citrusy for the style.
Interesting.
Yeah, only Ross would dry hop a Weiss beer.
Can't fault him on creativity, that's for sure.
Yeah. What were we gonna say?
You gotta try it.
Sounds like
You gotta
you made a West Coast IPA.
Yeah.
Can't make it any worse than they already do.
A West Coast Pilsner.
Yeah, I gotta find a
Shane,
category
how
for
many
it.
beers do you-
Maybe.
Mixed style, maybe 34.
Oh yeah.
See what they think on that.
How many beers? What, Haven?
Yeah. How many beers do you have going to NHC? I know Doug has 1, 2.
I had just the one.
Just one.
My beer that just scored a 45 was deemed undrinkable by Katie Miller. If anyone knows Katie Miller, tell her that she is wrong.
Nice. I have 3 beers going on to NHC, but technically only 2 batches. So what happened is I've got a stepdad who only drinks like Tecate Light, Dos Equis. It's all he drinks. And he lives 10, 15 minutes away. So every time he'd come over, if we're having like a get-together, family get-together, and I've got beer on tap, I'd have him try it. And my stepdad's a very honest man, and he'd tell me, like, even if it's a great version of a certain beer, he'd be like, that tastes like absolute dog shit. So as a joke earlier this year, I said, all right, I'm going to make, like, my goal is to make a beer that my stepdad would like, a Mexican light lager. So I brewed, I could pull up that recipe too, but it was, Pilsner, corn, and very little hops, like 10 IBU or something like that. Very little hops. I might have used Que Bueno, or I think Y Yeast or something has the Mexican lager strain. So very traditional Mexican lager with a lot of corn. And I entered that as both an international pale lager specified as Mexican light lager. And I also entered it as an American light lager because I don't think there's any freaking difference between an American light lager and a Mexican light lager, especially at a blind tasting. And they both advanced. So that is the same beer advancing as both American light lager and a American light and Mexican light. And then I also am advancing a blonde ale that I brewed as a cream ale, basically the same frickin' thing. Pilsner malt, corn, and Chico yeast with a little bit more hops than the Mexican light lager. And that one came out with a little bit more character than I thought a cream ale should have. So I entered it as a blonde ale, and that's advancing. So I find it very ironic that like my favorite beer styles are very characterful, either very hoppy, bitter, or like British malty. That's what I would love. And that's like what I want to ship internationally. That's what I want to compete with. I am not really a plain fizzy yellow beer type of guy. And that's what I have freaking advancing into NHC. And I swear to God, if I medal, I'm going to be happy, of course, but I'm going to be like, damn it, now like people know me as like a freaking American light lager brewer, which I know as a brewer is like, making a light lager is the holy grail of a brewer. But that's not what I want to win with. I want to win with like a dark mild. I don't want to win with a light lager.
But Shane, the rule is you enter the beer what it tastes like, not what you meant to make it.
I've
gotten 3 medals for Schwartz beers. I have never brewed a Schwartz.
A Dunkel, I'm guessing, is one.
I had a Marzen that I made a error and I put in too much chocolate hops, and so I put that one in as a Dunkel and a Schwartz, and I got second, third. I might have been first, second. Same beer, same table, same judges.
Wow.
And then I had a Vienna that just came out a little darker. It was too roasty to be a Dunkel, it was too light to be a Schwartz, so I added a bottle of Cinnabar into it and
Nice.
sent it off and got a gold. I think I got like a 41 as a Schwartz, but it was a Vienna.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, like I brewed a cream ale. I wanted to make a cream ale, Chico yeast, corn, and I used that Gambrinus IPA malt. If you guys have seen that, actually, Trevor gave me some of that malt, and I was like, oh, cool. I'm gonna make American. I thought cream ale would be good, but yeah, that IPA malt had a little bit more character. Well, they say it's like a mix of two row and Pilsner, but I don't know. It could have been the hops that I used. I used cashmere hops. Maybe they're a little bit too characterful for a cream ale. So I was like Doug said, you got to enter the beer you brewed, or enter the beer as it is, not as it was intended. So I was like, all right, screw it. This is my NHC beer. Wanted it to be a cream ale, but it's a blonde ale, and it won gold in that first round. So now it's going on.
The best story I have about a beer entering in multiple styles was last year. I meant it to be a Schwartz, and it came out a little light on the roast, so I entered it as a Schwartz, a Czech dark, and an international dark in a bunch of different competitions. I just like picked random whatever style I wanted to pick for that competition. One of them was Copper State, and I won medals in all three, and I have 40 fucking twos on all three styles, and I didn't get a 43 on any of them, which sucks because Shane and I are still in a race to Grandmaster 1, and I think we're tied right now, and that could really help, but I got a 42 in every one of them, which sucks.
I haven't looked at that dashboard in a while. I'm pulling it up now.
How many do you have? How many 43s do you currently have in your race?
43s, I have 6.
And for me, I have 43. I have 6.
All right.
I have 3, but I have like 7 42s.
Oh yeah, I got a ton of 42s and a ton of 37s.
So my best of show New Zealand Pilsner is a 42.
My God.
That one sucks. But I don't mind brewing another amazing New Zealand Pilsner to go back into competition, so that's fine.
I still need 4 more 38s though, so I have to keep my eye on the right ball.
It'll transfer over if they're high enough. You'll get like, that's what happened to me. I think when I got to master, it was like, what's before master? I forget.
Distinguished.
Yeah, so for me it was like boom boom real quick because it was like you just had to get that threshold, and then now with the 43s, it's pretty difficult.
I haven't gotten a single one this year. I mean, on old beers or new beers, it's been, I don't know if judges are adopting the kind of MHP scoring to their thought process. I know it was hard to keep that out of my mind when I judged at Indiana Brewers Cup. Do I bump this to 43 because it's deserving of a 40? And I can't think like that. And I know judges shouldn't think like that, but competition's even either gotten tougher or the mindset has changed.
I find that the best judges for me are the pro brewers. Love pro brewers at my table because they don't have any F's to give about anything. They're like, you know what? There's nothing wrong with the way it looks. 3. There's the aroma. I can smell shit. 4.
Yeah.
But they're giving good feedback, but it seems like pro brewers aren't as nitpicky, and they're a little bit more giving of for a good beer. If the beer's in balance, you're going to get a good score from the pro brewer.
It's one way or the other with pro brewers. I find it's like either they give a good score and it's wonderful, or they just shit on a really good beer and you don't know why, and they don't give any feedback. At least the pro brewers up here that judge competitions.
I guess I've been lucky.
All right, just for fun, since we're talking about it, I talked earlier about my best of show win in Scotland. So you can see here, this is my rum barrel-aged English barley wine. This guy, don't know his name, L. Bartlett, is a professional brewer. And yeah, like you said, Doug, Aroma, wood, raisins, dates, 10 out of 12. Hell yeah. Flavor, holy shit balls.
Holy shit.
18 out of 20. And like overall impression, as good as anything I've brewed commercially. Barley wine is life. Not much you could do to make that better.
That's
44.
the best feedback I've ever seen. Holy
Yeah.
shit. Oh.
Yeah, again, that's a pro brewer's feedback. It's like I would put this on tap means you're getting a good score,
Yeah.
and I would not sell this means you're getting a bad score, and for whatever reason, that's how they look at it.
Yeah, so I almost guarantee you that this guy who judged my beer in the first round, right, and gave me a score sheet, if he's a pro brewer locally in Scotland, that I want to say he was probably at the final best of show judging too, and if this is what he thought in the first round, he might have been the reason why I won best of show. If you guys are not familiar with best of show, it's a ton of judges, handful of judges, ton of beer, all different styles, the gold from every table. And sometimes you get very opinionated people that will steamroll their opinion on, what the best beer at that best of show round is. And if this guy was at that best of show judging, I almost guarantee he's the reason why. Based off this feedback he gave me, he's probably the reason why I got best of show there.
Now, on the flip side, the worst sheet I ever got, they put malt aroma 6 out of 12.
Well,
They're
So my
technically not
experience with
wrong.
judging,
I guess it shouldn't have been that malty then.
yeah, a lot of my experience judging has to do with like if people have actually been to Europe and drank European beers, then my European beers will do well. Like, but if they've never actually drank Kolsch and Cologne or Europe, then I tend to get hammered because they don't know what fucking Kolsch is.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to nail some of those styles, like especially that I feel like Kolsch and Pils, people like their Pils a certain way, and if that Pils isn't entered and it doesn't taste like what they expect, if they like a northern kind of Pilsner profile, it's a little more bitter, and it's a southern that's a little more malty and aromatic, they're gonna ding that shit, even though it's a good example. So I think that's kind of tough, those weird in between styles.
Yeah. Even personally, I find I'm pretty I mentioned earlier the Pilsners that I brew, I like to be dry, crisp, pretty high bitterness.
Yep.
I brewed a German Pilsner. It's actually still in the keg, but it's been cold crashed for like a week and a half. I need to get it kegged. I haven't pulled the yeast either, so it's just sitting there. But I pulled samples out, right? And I don't get the sharp bitterness that I want. So I'm like, God damn it. Like, it's not the beer that I want, but it still might be a very good Pilsner. So it's just like, I'll enter it. But maybe I might switch it. Maybe it's a Helles because it doesn't have that bitterness. So I don't know.
I got a second place at Red, White, and Brews. And it's a beer that should not have gotten a 23. It was the American Porter that I brewed for, I think, third, fourth quarter last year. And so I think I had it on tap in November. I know that. So end of November, it was on tap. It tasted like something was not in balance. Just seemed something was off. My son, who has a really good palate, he doesn't know why. He tastes it. He's like, yeah, I don't like it. And that's usually a good indicator there's something wrong, right? And then I put it into several competitions, and I got feedback ranging from DMS to just all the judges agreed there was something wrong with it, but they all had a different opinion. And then I put it into Red, White, and Brews because I needed the beer, and I got a second place, and it got like a 38. I'm like, these judges don't know what they're doing. It's just a roll of the dice.
Yeah, exactly. If you shotgun enough, you'll hit it.
Yeah.
My current philosophy is that we're not actually in a brewing competition. We're in a bottling competition. If you have 10 to 12 beers that are judged, that are put in, a third of them are going to have bottling process issues, and they lost before they ever got there. And then you're going to have, of those people left, you're going to have another third that have a process issue. Maybe it's a stringency, maybe it's the DMS, but there's a process issue which is going to hold them back. And then of the small number that are left, if they're all pretty much in balance, you can roll the dice and decide what place you're going to get, in my opinion.
No, it's pretty close. Sometimes, some tables.
Yeah, and I've been pretty successful. I did not as successful as you guys, but I've been fairly successful. And I still think that, at the end of the day, when you get rid of all the people who had process issues, the beers that were left, it's like, it's just rolling the dice.
Not as successful as us, coming from the guy who's 3 points ahead of everybody on the brew club circuit,
murdering the rest of us.
To be fair, Shane is not even entering in our brew circuit. I haven't seen his name once. I know he's on a different one. Ross has been flying a different flag, but if he was flying our flag the entire way, then I would not be in the lead. So I wasn't talking about you, Haven.
I will say this year I am trying to win Arizona Homebrewer of the Year and knock Ross off his very high horse. And then if all goes well, then I'm totally willing next year to enter in on the brew circuit and enter under the brew club. So I can come after you next year, Doug.
I think you should go for the repeat. You should go for the back-to-back. Just don't worry about this. Just go.
Oh yeah.
Here we go.
See if you can go back to back. Give the rest of us a chance.
Yeah, could do that.
So what happens if Ross wins Circuit of America and Arizona Homebrewer of the Year? How much is that club going to have to deal with that?
I think Ross needs to quit his day job and take me and Trevor along with him, and we'll open up a brewery. I think that's what that means.
There we go. He's already brewing enough beer,
it
sounds like.
That's a
Ross,
very
how
long
many best of
shot.
shows have you had this year?
How many
Ross,
what?
How many best of shows have you had this year?
I'm not sure. It's not that many. I think three, maybe 4.
That's
It's enough
insane.
that you're not sure. It's enough that you're not sure. Let's leave it at that.
It's a few. It's hard to get best of show. I mean, that's takes some real talent. So, I don't know if I have that level of talent yet. I'm just trying my best. Trying to beat Shane once in a while.
I'm like looking for reasons to quit my day job. So if Ross and I could just open up a brewery, I'll quit tomorrow.
I think we'll have a few customers have to fly out to Phoenix and enjoy some great brews.
Yeah.
Hey, we got an office in Scottsdale, so I could come down there.
That's where Ross lives.
There we go.
Me and Trevor are.
I'm sure you can. In this market, I'm sure you can find some breweries selling cheap. There's one in Redlands that's selling their brewery for $250,000. That's less money they put in it.
Oh my gosh.
If only I had $250,000 to spare. Damn it.
It's a tough market.
Small business loan.
Yeah, I know. Go with that.
That's shit. I mean, the brewing industry is not one that I'd want to get into at this point in time. Give it a decade, we'll see what happens. But my God, they are just dropping like flies. It's crazy. It's sad.
I've got a buddy in my local club that's opening one next year that I'm going to be a small part of. So
you were saying that, yeah, that's.
Yeah, why not? Go for it.
But I mean, you gotta be hopeful. I mean, if you don't think positive, then there's no point in any of this. I mean,
I think
the sad thing is this particular brewery, they had a good start. They had a great following, and 3 owners, and they were always there, and they kind of built, and then they got it to a certain point, and then they just stopped showing up, and the people who were showing up for the owners stopped showing up too, myself included, because I don't want to just go there and drink alone with whoever's manning the bar.
Yeah.
I think you gotta do a few things to be successful now with how saturated it's got. You have to make really good beer. 2, have to be able to market, and 3, you have to be a good business person, which what I see with a lot of people opening these breweries is there maybe 2 of those 3, but typically only 1.
Yes, the A23 method.
Yeah, I noticed that too. But also, I do think you can't just make beer. You can't just make like traditional beer. You need to make some freaking seltzers, some NA or something. You got to get, it's different now.
Ciders, food is important.
Food.
Yeah, you got to open a restaurant with it.
Food, walkability, non-beer,
Outdoor
drink,
space.
just your location has to be on point. Your branding has to be on point. Your social media game. I mean, it's everything.
Well, to that point, there's another brewery that opened up a few years before this one, and they didn't have a great location, but they built up a following. But then they took the money from their original success, and then they bought a different place, put in a kitchen, and put it closer to a better location. And now they have 2 locations. One they do mostly brewing, and one they do mostly serving, and they're killing it because good business. They invested the money, reinvested, and then they kind of built up where you walk in now. It looks like they might be franchised, but it's just them.
Wow.
And the other place looks like a cafeteria.
Wow. Yeah, I think we're gonna weed out a lot. We already have weeded out a lot of the shitty breweries, and they're kind of falling apart. Some of the big guys got caught up in that too. I was bummed to see Cascade closed in Washington. That kind of was a bummer, but I think a lot of the crappy ones are gonna get weeded out here in the next couple of years, and I don't know what's next for the industry, but it's not going to be 10,000 breweries in the country, that's for sure.
They're honestly probably not needed.
Not really. With so many local ones, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 within, and I know some of you guys live in bigger cities than I do. I have 8 within a 30-minute drive here. I can choose to go to any one of them. And I choose to make my own in my basement.
I could probably get to that many.
There are so many breweries in the Phoenix metro area that I haven't been to. Like, people will talk about them, and I haven't checked them out yet. Partly because, it's just time. But yeah, it's kind of, if I had the chance, there's a couple breweries that I would just go to over and over, right? Because I know I like them, and they've got variety.
Shane, I was going to ask you, are you filling your fermenters and then lifting onto that table, or are you filling it in place? Because that looks like a backache waiting to happen.
Yeah, so usually, I just recently moved. So like in my old garage, I had it air conditioned. And so what I would do is while I'm brewing, sanitize the fermenter, right? If it was clean and empty, because sometimes I do repitch directly into the dirty fermenter. But standard process would be, I put it up on the table empty and sanitized, and then I've got a counterflow chiller. So during knockout, I transfer directly into the bottom of the fermenter, just hose, tri-clamped on there, and fill it from the bottom. But my new house, still brew in the garage. It is way too hot in the garage and it's not air conditioned, so it's way too hot. The glycol chiller, I brewed back to back a German Pilsner and then the Fest beer. When I knocked out the Fest beer, because my groundwater is like 100 degrees, so I can chill my boiling wort to like 110, and then I use glycol to do the rest. What happened? My German Pilsner was sitting at, I don't know, 55. And now I had glycol circulating both fermenters, and you see where I'm going? The hot fermenter warmed up the Pilsner, and they both kind of, the Fest beer came down, the Pilsner came up, and they stabilized at like, I forget what it was, 70, 75 or something like that. and it would not drop. The glycol chiller like could not handle the garage temp. And the Pilsner was actively fermenting, and I didn't want it to be at 75 or 80 degrees. So I moved everything inside in the kitchen pantry where there was empty like counter space, and I carried the fermenters in and lifted them up on the counter, and it was very heavy. But this is what we got to do to make homebrew, so I had to do it.
So those are full when you're lifting them?
Yeah, well, they were at that point, yeah. But it was kind of like, well, they were full to the brim, 6 gallons, heavy, super heavy. And then I also lifted the glycol chiller up too, so it's out of the way, and so that's where the fermenters still are.
That goes completely against my philosophy of brewing. I don't want to hurt my back brewer. I don't lift water. I now have all my fermenters on the ground on wheels. Nothing is being lit. I don't lift my fermenters anymore. The only thing I lift is the grain basket.
Yeah, my plan is before next summer, hopefully to air condition the new garage, and then I wouldn't be lifting fermenters. But every brew day, I'm exhausted physically, just because I'm standing up the whole time. I'm sitting, standing, sitting, standing, walking around, lifting things. So I guess I'm the opposite of you. I am a break your back brewer.
Oh yeah, I'm lifting fermenters in and out of fridges, full, and moving shit around and lifting water, and I thought the basement brewery made it easier, but everything's just closer, but I still do all the same manual labor. It's just I don't have to walk upstairs. I just get to turn and do the same manual labor. So, oh yeah, same way. I did a double brew day last weekend. I did 2 batches of mixed firm sour, and after I was toast after that. I was so tired.
So
Brew days.
I see a future for Cheyne where he's going to get some hot cubes, and he's going to just he's gonna put his stuff into a hot cube, let it cool off overnight, and then bring it in 2.5 gallons at a time to fill into that fermenter, and that would save your back.
Yeah, not a bad way.
There we go.
I didn't present on this, but the coolest batch I did in terms of chilling was on New Year's Eve 8 months ago. I brewed a Saison, and the only time of year where it gets a little bit cool here in Arizona at night, New Year's Eve time. And so I brewed the Saison, and I knocked out like at 11:30, and I went and stuck it outside underneath my fruit trees.
Oh, that's right.
I let it sit there uncovered all night, fireworks going off at midnight, and then I came out at 7:30 or whatever, and the wort was sitting there underneath my fruit trees, and I carried it was in my stainless steel bucket, so not as heavy as the bigger fermenters I use now, and I stuck it into a barrel which had Brett in it, and I let that, and then I co-pitched it with Saison yeast, and I just let it ferment in the barrel.
Nice. Pretty
awesome. That was the coolest way I've done chilling. Unfortunately, I recently just dumped that batch because didn't hold up to the test of time, and because I'm building that new Keezer that I shared, I'm like, I don't want to move this to the new Keezer and taint a new line, and I was like, I'm not drinking the beer. I did submit it to a couple competitions. It didn't do well. I'm like, I just dumped it, even though it's a lot of time and effort, but I'd rather start fresh.
So you have glycol for pitching, so I do something similar to you. So my question is, are you of the mindset of, if you're going to ferment, let's say 10C, are you of the mindset to pitch at 12, or to get it all the way down to 10 and pitch at 10, or the same with an ale? If you're gonna ferment at 19C, sorry guys, 67.
I'm good with C because my glycol chiller is only in C. I can't convert it to F, so I'm good with C.
We should change glycol chillers. Mine's only in F. I can't change it to C.
Oh my gosh.
I do everything in Celsius except for my fermentation. But I still think and see. So I always have to do a graph check to check to. Anyway,
Yeah.
so my question is: are you fermenting at? Are you pitching at 22 and then bringing it down to 19, or are you bringing it down to 19, or are you bringing it down to 17, pitching and letting it come up to 19? Two different philosophies there.
I feel like you're gonna hate my answer because I hate when people give me these answers when I ask questions because I just want black and white answers. I do all of the above. It's either dependent on style or dependent on if I'm being impatient. Or for example, the Fest beer that I recently brewed, it was a fresh pitch of 3470. And I was like, well, that was the one where I was telling you guys I had issues dropping it down. I think by the time I got it inside the house and it was, I'm going to use F, it was 70 F or in the 60s. I just went ahead and pitched. Yeah, even though I was going to ferment that one around 50, I just went ahead and pitched around 60 because a lot of what like Brewlosophy or, your guys' experience, like warm fermented lagers still come out clean. I was like, well, I'm just going to pitch it. If anything, it's going to get the yeast going. And then the glycol is going to chill it down to 10. So I'll do that. But for example, when I kegged the Fest beer, I brewed a Dunkelsbach and I pitched it right on top of the yeast cake. The coolest I could get that Dunkelsbach was like freaking 90 degrees. And it went straight into the fermenter at 90. So I was like, what am I going to do? I'm reusing this yeast. I'm not cleaning the fermenter in between. I pitched it right in there. And it was bubbling a couple hours later.
Have you ever tried?
We had at our local homebrew club, we had a Fermentus rep that came in, and he's like the homebrew rep, flew in from France. And he shared some presentations with us and dropped like a little bit of knowledge on pitching temps. And on their dry yeast, they were fine with you pitching a little warm and then lowering it down to fermentation temperatures. That's not what I do personally, but like they didn't see any negative effects on that with their studies. So I'm not sure it really matters as long as you're in range.
Have you ever tried like getting your, lowering your wort as far as you can with groundwater and then diverting glycol into your immersion or your
counterflow?
Counterflow?
No. That's a good idea.
That's expensive.
Well, yeah, I guess that you'd lose some glycol. That's a good idea, but I guess like I was saying earlier, brew days for me are typically like long, laborious, and like manual labor. And that to me, it's a good idea, but that to me, I immediately think about like, God, I need to get a pump out and hoses and hook up things. And I'm usually, if I'm brewing alone, I'm usually not drinking and I'm paying very close attention and I'm very like anal about things. And I get very like anxious about like, oh shit, I'm knocking out. I have 20 things to sanitize and it's just kind of like chaos. So I feel like hooking up more things, I don't want to do that. But then of course, if people come over and I'm brewing with them and we're drinking, brew days are a bit more laid back.
And that makes me anxious just hearing you talk about all that work.
Exactly. I don't know why. Every time I'm like, why the F am I doing all this? And I just keep doing it.
I brew. I turn a valve to get the water in. I let it heat up before I wake up. I mash in. Half the time I just leave and I do other stuff. And then when I get home, it's sitting at mash out temperature. I pull the grain. My fermenters are already closed up and sanitized. I feel like I just cheat.
Yeah, see, you do a good job of preparing, and I always have good intentions of doing that, but then lazy, I'm a procrastinator, so it's usually very hectic and I'm running around.
Yeah, I guess on that point, I don't. The beer I kicked out a couple days ago, the fermenter's still sitting there dirty. It's closed up. It's got CO2 in it. I don't care. It's might as well have beer in as far as I'm concerned. But when I clean it, I will take it all the way to sanitized and then close everything up and lock it down sanitized, so that when I have a brew day, I know, because of my SOPs, is that I just have to do a light re-sanitizing, but I know that it's sanitized before I even get there.
Yeah, I need to do that. Same thing with kegs. I've got like a nice little keg washer set up, and I know like should just sanitize like at the end of cleaning kegs. Sometimes I'll do like a batch run, right? Like I'm cleaning 5 kegs. I should just sanitize them, purge them, seal them, and they're ready. I usually don't do that, and so that's a good process.
Well, the other reason I do that is because I don't have the mental capacity these days to remember. If I don't have the same process every time, then I will look at that and I'm like, is it sanitized? Is it clean? Is it dirty? It's like, I don't know what stage it is, and I don't want to have some kind of chart to keep track of, color coding, labels or something. I just want to know that, it's either dirty or it's clean and sanitized.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's smart. Well, Shane, we've had you for 2 hours. I want to respect your time and get you back to what you need to do. Does anyone have any last minute questions for Shane about anything that he talked about? Shoot him in the chat or feel free to speak up, whatever.
Desert Island
Shane,
beer.
Yeah, there we go. That's a good one. We always ask that one.
Shane, don't forget to fill out my poll, because you said you did have some troubles getting in. So.
Oh, Jesus.
Which poll?
It's in general. I'm gonna get in trouble for it, so you might as well fill it out.
It's on the general chat of Discord. It has no impact to anything in the Discord.
To answer Will's question, Desert Island beer. I am a very kind of seasonal, or I go through phases of styles, and I am loving hoppy lagers. And so like New Zealand Pilsner, obviously, West Coast Pilsner is very popular these days, and you can find them like commercial cans at bottle shops nearby. So today I'm going to answer that question with West Coast Pils. Dry, light, easy to drink, hoppy, bitter, refreshing, and you're on a desert island. That's a good answer.
Yeah, that's. God, I don't know what I'd answer. I'm a very seasonal drinker. Like fall colors come around here, temperatures drop into the 60s, which you probably might not see in Arizona very much. Oktoberfest, porters, winter stouts all day, every day. Yeah, it's tough to pick just one.
Yeah.
Guinness is the answer.
Guinness.
Hey guys, gotta bounce.
Yeah.
All right. See you, Doug. Yeah.
See you, Doug.
I'll see you all on Discord if you're there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Shane.
I'm out as well.
What?
Have a good one, Will.
See
all
ya.
right. Yeah, I'm gonna go. Yeah, thanks for having me, Haven. I'll see you guys. See you guys around.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time, Shane. I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. See you.
Okay, we'll see ya.